Can we have the next slide, Siobhan? This is probably information for Georgina and Monica here. In case you're not sure who the PHRP are, this is a bit of an introduction. That's a partnership made of local people, community organisations, council officers and councillors. We've been part of the Peckham Townscape Heritage Initiative since 2016, working with Southwark Council and the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And this work is going to end at the end of this year. And then we're hoping to continue. If we could have the next slide, Siobhan. We're hoping to continue. We feel like we've kind of engaged with local enthusiasm, knowledge and interest, and we're hoping to evolve into a new group to continue with the aims of the PHI to protect, enhance and revitalise the Peckham Town Centre and the Ryling Conservation Area. We're really interested in kind of expanding the sense of what heritage is or could be. In the second bullet here, we've got this idea of old and recent, built and natural, cultural and economic, and so that this is a kind of dynamic, fluid process of kind of engaging in what the meaning of heritage is. We want to try and expand the number of people who are kind of interested and exploring Peckham's heritage, and to demonstrate how heritage contribute to a sustainable place to live and work. The lovely image on the right is from one of the school projects that we've been working with a really good organisation called Our Hut, and they ran a series of projects on the built environment with local primary schools in Peckham, and these are one of the fantastic drawings that the children produced. Next slide, Siobhan. Okay, so tonight's talk is about local listing, and it's something that is both kind of, one has a strong sense of what it means, but it's sort of equally sort of surrounded with a sense of kind of abstract ideas. There is guidance on what local listing is from Historic England, and this is just a quick snapshot. That it's got something to do with identifying and celebrating historic buildings, places and spaces, etc., which enrich and enliven their area. So they're kind of really key ideas. And I think we all have a sense of what these buildings or spaces is in our own terms that contribute, that enrich and enliven local areas. So that's kind of one set of ideas to think about. And then in the next slide, Southwark Council have produced a really good document, which is their Historic Environment Heritage Supplementary Planning Document, or SPD. And they set out quite good guidance, which is based on Historic England's guidance on how to, you know, how a local list can be drawn up and what the criteria are for buildings. Michael is probably going to talk about this in detail later, but I thought I'd just skim over the kind of set the context. In Southwark's SPD, we've got the sense of special architectural or historic interest, townscape or group value, and a sense of local distinctiveness. And I'd really encourage anyone who's interested to read the SPD, to read this document carefully, especially the local listing part. And then on the next slide. So we've kind of mapped out what the planning structure and planning policy ideas are for local listing. And I just felt like I wanted to kind of also put the sort of sense of the kind of emotional and sense of belonging ideas that I think are really intrinsic to local listing. There's something about local knowledge, enthusiasm, interest, the sense of people really caring about their surroundings and wanting to understand, to express their feelings, to ask questions, to kind of have an interaction with the built environment and the surroundings. Over the course of the last 6 years, in carrying out various events and activities, in the PHRP, we've really kind of got to know what people are interested in, started to kind of engage with people, and there's an enormous amount of knowledge, local knowledge and experience, and a strong commitment to Peckham as a place, and to want to protect and enhance what it is that makes Peckham distinctive and special. So that's a kind of, like, in your guts, a feeling of what you think really matters and what, you know, enthuses you, and that we feel is there. Sorry about that background noise. Next slide. Yeah, I just wanted to track back. This is back in 2019. We started to work about, look at what we thought local listening could mean, and we came up with the idea of a community list. And we had an event where we invited people to kind of nominate buildings, and we kind of mulled over. If we look at the next slide, Siobhan, we mulled over what sorts of buildings people are interested in, and people brought nominations to this meeting. Sorry. Okay, next slide. Okay, I just wanted to draw your attention to Southwark's SPD and a really helpful part of it, which is the glossary of terms, which is at the back of the document. Because I think there's a lot of quite kind of subtly different and subtly complex terms that are used when heritage value is discussed. So I've just gone through here and highlighted some of the terms that I think it's worth familiarizing yourself with, or it's really helpful to read through. For example, here we've got the first one that's highlighted as conservation. I think the kind of concept that's really interesting here is maintaining and managing change, this idea of managing change. It's very different from an idea of preservation and kind of stasis. It's about some idea of a kind of dynamism that is like kind of clearly analysed and managed. Then we've got designated heritage asset. That's quite a mouthful, but it's used a lot. And these are this idea of designated or kind of legally adopted heritage assets, which can mean World Heritage Sites, scheduled monuments, listed buildings, RECs, registered parks and gardens, registered battlefields or conservation areas. We're talking about locally listed buildings, which are often called undesignated heritage assets or locally designated assets. So they've got a sort of got a slight ambiguity attached to them, but they're not designated. They're not sort of statutorily protected like listed buildings are. Next slide. There you go. There's some more useful definitions. At the bottom of the left-hand page, you'll see historical interest, which comes into play later in terms of the criteria for local listing. So this idea for buildings, this refers to buildings that have important aspects of the nation's social, economic, cultural or military history, such as industrial buildings, railway stations, schools, hospitals, theatres and town halls. It's one of the things I was hoping we could have a chat with Michael about later is it only the nation's history or is it about local history? Can we kind of make it much more localized? You know, that's another nuanced discussion. At the top of the right-hand page, this idea of group value. I think that's something that's really important in Peckham Town Centre, the idea of, you know, a group of buildings having a significance and a kind of identity, you know, which again connects with some idea of townscape. You know, in other words, it's not about the building as a sort of singular object, but it's about the spatial and kind of spatial relationship and sense of place that the group of buildings creates. And then next slide. This word on the left, the first word here, significance. I think that's quite a difficult word. It's used a lot, and generally it means a sort of value and a kind of meaning. And it's connected to the word interest. So the significance of the heritage asset, it's to do with how much interest it has, which is archaeological, architectural, artistic, or historic. And again, this feeds into the criteria for eligibility to be adopted onto the local list. And then I've highlighted the various values that are set out, because again, they inform the guidance on local listing, aesthetic, communal, evidential, and historical. So I think just that's very useful to spend a bit of time familiarizing yourself with. Okay, next slide. So again, this is just an overview, just to refer to the guidance on criteria for local listing. Okay, next slide. So just this is a summary of the criteria, and we can discuss these in a bit more detail with Michael. Okay, next slide. So I just wanted to, that was just a general introduction to the kind of context and the guidance on local listing. And the process of consultation has been running since I think the end of August. It's due to finish on the 30th of November. And so Southwark have set up this consultation commonplace mapping system, where Southwark have marked with the blue dots the buildings or spaces that they want to nominate for the local list. And some people have added their comments on the green dot. Some of you may already have had a look at the commonplace map. And it's really, really crucial that you get to know that and that you engage with the commonplace map as a way of logging your nominations. I think what we're planning to do in the PHRP is make nominations on behalf of the PHRP, but of course, as individuals, you know, people can make their own nominations. Michael, I was going to hand over to you at this point so that you can talk about it from Southwark's point of view.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you, Siobhan. We've, that's a perfect sort of introduction. Thank you very much, Claire. And for the reference to the Heritage SPD, which I think really helps to, is the enabling document that sort of led to this situation, to this place where we are consulting on our local list. Just a brief little bit of background. There's been, I'm sure Benny will know as well, there's been a long history of lists of buildings of local interest, which has been drawn up over many years by several different people and different stages of Southwark. And I mean, we've inherited at least 3 or 4 different lists that we've been working with, and the purpose then of this consultation was to map out all the buildings that are identified as candidates for local listing, and then to invite people to comment and on those candidates, and then to nominate. So Claire's what we've done is we've started a consultation, and the consultation started. It actually launched mid-August, but we've allowed a full 3 months after August so September, October, November, finishing at the end of November. So we've got roughly about another 6 weeks to go before we pull this together and then see what we've received and what we've got in terms of comments. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Siobhan. So what is a local list? A locally listed building is a building or structural feature which is not listed at national level, but is important in the local context, owing to its special architectural or historic interest or its townscape or group value. So it at the moment in law, a locally listed building doesn't gain the same level of protection as a nationally listed building. However, and that is the aspect about this which is useful in terms of the consultation. The consultation gives weight to the local list. It means that we've got people's views on and our communities, our neighborhoods' views on the candidates for local listing, and we have a weight of evidence that says that these are buildings that are or structures of value or places of value to our communities, and that carries some weight in planning terms. So that we can apply, we can use in planning terms. The National Planning Policy Framework gives planning authorities the right, enables authorities to use the planning process to identify buildings of local interests, to recognize people or structures of local interest, and to demonstrate with evidence, especially consultation, where there is a great weight of evidence of the value of a building or a structure to a community. Next slide, please. So in this consultation, we're using the consultation to ask people to tell us what they think about buildings we've suggested or that are on the local list or candidates at the moment, and make their own suggestions. So nominate or suggest buildings that might be of interest, of local interest to them as well, and are particular significance to them as a group. The responses from this consultation will then be used to draw up together and to finalize, to formalize the local list. And we expect that we anticipate that we'll be doing that after November, after the consultation closes. We will look at all the consultation responses, and we will be able to formalize and then publish the local list, and we would do that again on the maps. So that's the reason why we've chosen a map-based system, because it's part of the, as Claire mentioned, the sort of Historic England guidance, best practice guidance. The best practice guidance is to publish publish it widely and make it clear that everybody can access the information openly and transparently on the website. So that's why the map is really, really useful to us as well. So next slide, please. So here we have, I mean, this is I suppose a repeat in the sense that it identifies the consultation and your views matter, because it helps us to, it gives us all an opportunity to tell us which buildings are important, significant, and then we can use that consultation to offer protection to buildings or structures which are important. We use the website to invite as broad a range of people as possible, and we want to encourage people who not only live but work and spend time in Southwark to nominate, and communities as well who might in Southwark to nominate their buildings of local their buildings that are of value, or structures which are, or places which are of value to them. Next slide, please. So here we go again with the criteria. As Claire mentioned, the criteria are listed in the Heritage SPD, but broadly speaking, well, they are age and rarity. So buildings that are, or structures which are old or have a rarity about them. They might be of aesthetic value and landmark status. So have a presence in the townscape or presence in a community. They might be central, around which a community, or like a school or a place of worship, which is central to that has a landmark status, is well known as a landmark for that community. They might have group value. Now, these are ones where, as Claire mentioned, where in and of themselves, the building or the structure might be quite nondescript, quite plain or simple, but as a group they come together and they have a presence in the townscape. They have they might form a sense of enclosure or create a space or place which is which is very distinctive. They might be of archaeological interest, or designed landscaping, including things like parks and open spaces, parks in particular that are planned landscapes. As Claire mentioned, the Heritage SPD is well worth looking into and familiarising yourself with those criteria. But I think we've picked them specifically, and they are consistent with the Historic England's guidance, because they carry the same value, if you like. They have the same, they are consistent in terms of their designation, and they are intended to be easily understood or well understood. But if you have any questions, there's certainly a lot more in the Heritage SPD to look into and to find out, familiarize yourself with. Next slide, please. So the consultation is run on this map-based website called Commonplace, and the consultation is open till Wednesday, the 30th of November. We've written to all the building owners and occupiers of the candidates, the ones that have been mapped, and obviously invited them to comment. It's having inherited this list of or this disparate list of various different properties, I was very keen to make sure that that the owners are aware that the council has these lists, and that they will be that they have been nominated for local listing. Next slide, please. So to make things simpler, we've divided the borough into Southwark North, Southwark Central, and Southwark South, and it's divided on wards, really, on a roughly equal spread of wards or area. So if you go to the next slide, Southwark North has the wards Borough and Bankside, North Bermondsey, Surrey Docks, St George's, and Chaucer. So roughly, well, it covers the northern part of the borough. Next slide, please. Southwark Central captures the sort of middle of the borough: Newington, North Walworth, Old Kent Road, Camberwell Green, includes Peckham, and Rye Lane, and Nunhead and Queen's Road. And then the next slide, please. And the final one is Southwark South, which is Champion Hill, Goose Green, Peckham Rye, Dulwich Village, and so on. Dulwich, all the Dulwiches, I suppose, all the Dulwich wards are in Southwark South. And that's really just for practicality's sake, and also to focus on local neighbourhoods. What we've found is people want to explore buildings of local interest or value in their areas by maybe walking around or having a look around, and so rather than having this sort of exhaustive list of the whole borough, we've tried to make it more local, and that's how we've divided it. So if you go to the next slide, please. So when you go to that consultation website, you will see that all the buildings have been polygonized. What I call polygonized is they've been drawn, a polygon's been drawn around each building. But in order for it to interact more closely with telephones or tablets, a dot has been added as well on top of each polygon. So that's what we're told by all the sort of people who've set up these websites for us, is that people do interact with these websites on their phone, and having a dot means that they can zoom in and find something much easier than if it's a polygon, which doesn't really show up in larger scale. But when you zoom in, you will be able to see the polygon. So it's much more apparent. So you can actually see which buildings or which assets have been, which structures have been nominated as candidates for local list. So we've published these as candidates, and then if you go to the next slide, you use on the top right hand corner. So here's a sort of close up on the website. So you can see the dots become little, stay the same size, but as you zoom in, you can see the polygons of all the buildings and structures which have been identified. And we've polygonized them all and given them all a brief description as well. So when you click on that, you can see that. And then what you can do is on the top right hand corner of the slide of the website is something that says have your say, and you click on that, and then it gives you the option of dropping a pin, and you can drop a pin either on one of the blue dots, the nominated buildings, and then comment on that building or that structure or that place. And or alternatively, you can drop that pin on a new, on another structure, which you think you would like to nominate for the local list. When you do that, it'll drop a pin automatically, and then it'll ask you to give your comment about that pin. So if you go to the next slide, please. So when you drop a pin on a building that hasn't been nominated, you drop a pin and it becomes a green dot, and there there's a set of questions that come up, which gives you the option to say whether you agree or disagree with that nomination, and whether you and which criteria you think of the 5 criteria, which criteria you think the building or the structure meets. You can also have a chance to put in an address. So don't worry if you don't put the dot exactly on the bill, or the pin exactly on the building that you think is the right, exactly on the map. If you put it on, and then you'll be asked to put a street name and number, and that way you can nominate that building. And then so you'll be asked to give the criteria, and also to give some text to say why you think that building or structure or place is of value or importance to you or your community. In the usual way of the modern world, you can tweet, you can use the website to sort of tell people or share on social media, all the platforms, to tell people about a building or a place that you've nominated, and encourage others to also vote, or not vote, but to go on the website and to nominate themselves, or to agree or add their comments to your nominated building. So there's all sorts of those interacting opportunities there. Next slide, please. Yes, so here this is normally what happens then. When you click on it, it comes up with, are you commenting on a building, or you're nominating a new asset? It asks you to give given a street, a name, a number, or a postcode, and why do you feel this way? So there's an opportunity for a little bit of free text for you to say, oh, I think it's really important, or this building or this shop is very important to our neighborhood, our community, to give the reasons why, and then to click on the criteria that you think the building or the structure meets. So age and rarity, aesthetic value, group value, and so on. You can click on as many as you think are appropriate for the building. So it might have more than one. It might be a really old and very rare building, but also have very strong aesthetic and landmark value, and historic, evidential, and communal value. I mean, if it's those are very important. It's not only sort of single criteria that we're looking for. We're looking for buildings or structures that meet more than one of those criteria, and then to also say whether you strongly agree or strongly disagree. It's the option of people to sort of give their view either way, whether the building should be locally listed. Next. Yeah, so the consultation, just a reminder, the consultation closes on the 30th of November, and we've tried to make it as interactive as possible. We've got we were checking on the statistics. We've got almost 2,000 people, 2,000 hits on the website. Almost, I think it's 300 or 400 people already have looked at the website, and then there's also been 200 or 300 joining via social media, agreeing by proxy, if you like, so through social media, interacting and agreeing, so joining the website via social media. So it's been a very sort of successful consultation overall, generally, up to now. And as I said, we've got 6 weeks or so to go. So we're very keen to encourage all communities. We also have, and it's one thing that I wanted that this presentation doesn't show, and that is on the website. There's a tab called Documents. If you go to the website, the Commonplace website, there's a tab called Documents, in which you'll be able to see the list for. We've broken them down as an exhaustive list of all the candidates in each ward. So if you're interested in, say, walking around your neighbourhood and looking at the candidates that are in your ward, you can download that list and use that as a sort of guide. All the streets are listed in alphabetical order, and you can and all the numbers are listed there, so you can have a look at that and go through it yourself as well. So I welcome any questions you might have about it. You're on.
Do you have any examples of like what a structure or a feature? I was just kind of curious.
We do. I have them on another presentation, but I can go through. You mean?
Just even if you can just, I was just curious. Like, so a structure, would that be like, one could be like the Peckham Arch?
Well, I suppose so. Yes, definitely. That's a structure, not a. Yeah, certainly. Yes, we have. Structures and features include things like. Milestones, like they have or historic border markers, or, things like some people have even sort of picked up sort of stink pipes. I call. Sorry,
walls.
Well, I suppose so. If they are very, if they are kind of historic walls of, existing retaining, walls of a you know, that maybe have long lost features or something like that of an area. Yeah, I can imagine that those might be of importance, certainly.
Nancy's got her hand up.
And yeah, and
Derek?
Derek, yes.
But you're on mute, Nancy?
Sorry. I'd like to know how the finalist will be chosen from this great vast map and numbers of nominated places, buildings, whatever.
Sure. What we will use the consultation to find to identify, to see which ones, what other, we've got our candidates that are published, that we've published, and we'll see what nominated, what new ones are nominated. When we've got a panel of sort of senior officers in the council who will review all the nominations, and then we will we'll decide ultimately whether those buildings are worthy, or those structures or those places are worthy of adding to the local list. What I'd like to just add there is that you know, it's not you know, the local list. I'd hate to think that it's sort of that you all think that it's the, you know, set in stone, and at the end of November that's it. No, you know, the shutters come down and we don't have a local, you know, we won't, it won't change after that. We've got we will be reviewing it in a periodically. So if you nominate a building and it doesn't make the local list this time, it certainly will give us a heads up. It might be that it's something that maybe it's not suitable now, but maybe in the future it might be a worthy contender. So it's something that's, I'd like to think, and I'd like to hope that will stay alive and will be reviewed periodically.
Michael, are you anticipating quite a lot of debate within the, you know, the group in the council who decide which buildings are the final local list?
What, I mean, I don't know.
Is it going to be challenging, do you think, to trim it down if you get a lot of nominations?
Well, I think we'll have to just be clear that they are worthy of, and they do meet the criteria. I think the criteria, you know, certainly I'd like to think that, you know, the top criteria, age and rarity, I would like to think that that is, you know, they would have to meet at least that criterion, and then certainly more than one criterion. Those are certainly if they meet 2 or 3 criteria, those are very very important, and those will carry a lot more weight, I guess. We do need to be conscious that it is a big unwieldy list, and these are people's properties, so we're going to have to write to them and say again, you know, and give them the option to, you know, give the owners of the property also the opportunity to comment on the fact that they've been nominated for local listing. So it's you know, we just need to be cautious about, you know, the implications for us and for the owners, certainly.
Clyde, did you have a question?
Yes, it just actually leads on from what you were just saying, Michael. As a house owner or a property owner, and you find that your building is proposed, do you have the powers to object to this totally? I mean, it's not like...
Yes.
But
yes,
so that wouldn't be like listing, because you don't have the power to object to the national list being applied to you. But you're with local listing, you're envisaging that people will be able to challenge.
Oh yes, you have to have the option of appeal and objecting to the local list. We have you know, we have to understand that there for example, you know, as I said, it is a large list that we've inherited, and we've you know, it hasn't had this sort of interrogation, this opportunity to, you know, these people might have no idea that they're that their building's been nominated or their property is on some list for the council. So we need to give them the opportunity to respond and provide more information. They might have a situation where they might say, well, I've actually got planning permission to demolish the building, so it's not worth, it's it wouldn't be worth your while putting it on the local list because I'm intending to do, that kind of thing. We've tried to be as kind of exhaustive as possible, but with the best will in the world, we might we might not those kind of things might not be immediately apparent. So we have to give them the option of providing more information or saying why they think they shouldn't be locally listed. As I said, there's limited weight that comes in law with local listing, but we would what we think is the best way to go about it is to place what are called Article 4s. So the presumption when a building goes onto the local list, the presumption is against its demolition without a suitable planning permission. And there are criteria. There's a process that's set out in the Heritage SPD for how you can justify works to or even demolition of locally listed buildings, where perhaps there might be enormous sort of public benefits arising, or something, or other sort of criteria of the like. So we've that's how we propose to protect them additionally. Yeah.
Derek or Nancy there? Handle?
Yeah, Derek.
Hello, Derek.
Thank you, Michael. I'm hiding, but
No, that's all right. I can hear you.
okay. When I read the SPD, it included as a criteria buildings which have an association with a notable individual or person, and it's not among the criteria that you set out.
Right. I don't. Well, those are the criteria that we have. I don't know if you can flick up to the criteria, Siobhan. I think it's slide. There. Oh, slide. Yeah, that one. So it might be that if you read in the SPD, it might say under historic, evidential, communal and social values, there might be it might mention, say, a notable person and so on, of a local, community, a person who took a lead in a community or something like that. So that might be the criterion that you might think about.
Michael, you talk about local plaque schemes, which implies that's to do with notable people. Sort of local knowledge.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed.
Mm.
So I think it's that communal and social values that are is probably worth sort of focusing in on if you have knowledge of a local personage or someone, I think in that area as well, it might be things like war memorials and things like that. People, places that people visit regularly for, when they remembering. Or that are of real value to them as a community, certainly. Clyde, I think Clyde's got his hand up.
Clyde, yeah.
Yes, just another one. Just talking about permitted development rights, do I take it that permitted development rights in themselves would not be affected unless you issued an Article 4 direction? Would that be a correct assumption? Yes, well, unless we place an Article 4, the permitted development rights would not cannot be taken away. The Article 4 that we are thinking about is probably for buildings that are outside conservation areas because they're protected already,
but outside conservation areas, and to remove the ability to demolish the building without planning permission. So that's the one permitted development right that we would be seeking to remove using our Article 4s. Nothing else really. So we wouldn't be, restricting any further. We would really encourage people to retain, reuse, repurpose, extend, conserve, really retain those buildings and celebrate them.
But the things, I mean, architectural details are the sort of things that people quarrel about, because they're the sort of things that people want to change without let or hindrance from the planners, and those are the very things which people highlight and want to retain. Do you anticipate big arguments on those grounds?
We couldn't. I think that we would have difficulty unless if there's something of architectural interest of detail, then it might be something worth nominating for formal designation as a listed, nationally important listed building. It's difficult to, I would say, protect every square inch of a building. We have to be realistic. These are working buildings that have to, or structures that have to, that have to exist in the modern world, and we haven't gone to that degree to identify and protect individual features of buildings. No.
Okay, just looking at the time here. The next part of the talk, I was proposing to sort of zone in on Peckham. So I had a look at the commonplace map. Siobhan, can we get it up so we can just look at Peckham? I don't think that hyperlink, I'm not sure if that hyperlink works.
Yeah, I just have to stop sharing and share again. Hold on, please.
Sorry.
That's all right. Is it this one
yeah,
or this one?
Yeah, it's that one. Let's see if you can get. Yeah, if you just select, select the blue map here.
Do I just click on it?
Yeah, and then the pink arrow that comes out onto beside the text. Okay, and then if we just scroll down a bit, we can see Peckham. And to zoom in. Yeah. And then if can we zoom in a bit on the yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that was just can we scroll up a bit so we can see the north of Rye Lane? Brilliant. This was just to give people a kind of more sort of detailed snapshot of, at the moment, what's proposed for Peckham Town Centre. So I had a look at this, and then because in the PHRP we've already been kind of evolving a long list of nominated buildings for local listing, which we've had up our sleeve for months now, and we've been kind of mulling over. So I had a look at this, and then I referred it to our long list. And so the following slides are buildings which aren't nominated by the council, but which we think are significant and should be and could be locally listed. So I thought we'd just go through these. So can we go back to my slides? Sorry, Siobhan, you have to work really hard. Yeah, the next slide here. Okay, sorry, before we go on to that, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that this is part of a bigger process. So we've put together a long list of potential buildings. Then we're having today's talk. Then we're going to have a walk in Peckham Town Centre on the 22nd of October to look at priority buildings for local listing. Then we imagine there'll be more discussion, and then we're going to submit nominations by the 30th of November for discussion by the council in December, as Michael said. So next slide, Siobhan. Thanks. Okay, so Jones and Higgins and the former HSBC buildings are big priorities for us. We just think they're really, really important. We think they should be statutorily listed. And I suppose the question really, I mean, I'm not meaning to put you in the spot at all, Michael, it's just more to have a general discussion. You know, could they be listed as an intermediate quick step towards statutorily listing? I mean, it would be amazing if they weren't locally listed at this point, if it was going to be a quick and easy process. While we campaign, while we continue the work for statutory listing.
Oh, they can certainly. I mean, you can certainly nominate them for local listing and put. And certainly, if they're not on the local, they're not already identified as candidates, they certainly should be, and place as much weight as you can on them. That
I suppose I was quite staggered that they weren't already. I was amazed that they weren't already.
Well, I'm surprised, but you know,
it's,
as I said, it's been sort of so hit and miss, and I just you know, you really need to capture them as capture as many as possible. Yeah, and these are certainly candidates. You know, I would definitely go for them. I mean, they are already in the conservation area, so that does protect them to a degree, but they would certainly be, and they're noted in the conservation area appraisal. So it's you know, it's one of those things that definitely should be on there. And the weight of the consultation, you know, if you get as many people agreeing to it as possible, then that will also contribute and give greater weight. The national listing process, I have to say, is a bit sort of opaque, shall I say, is the best way to describe it. And they often, what we find is a lot of buildings fall over. Apologize for my use of language. They don't make the statutory listing simply because they're not, you know, they don't preserve, you know, not every feature has been, you know, preserved. And I have no, you know, explanation for what they list or what they don't list. I always think, oh gosh, this is a definite candidate for listing, and it just it slides past. And there's other ones where I think, gosh, really, and it has been listed. So I can't give you a guarantee that they would be nationally listed. But
no. I mean, we
should add them straight away onto the local list, definitely.
Okay. Next slide. Thank you, Michael. Next slide. Okay, so can we just flick through?
These are listed.
Yeah, no, 58 is listed. Number 58 is grade 2 listed, but we want to make the case that the group should be listed. 58 to 62. Yeah. And the next slide, which is 98 to 104. Of course. This group is not even mentioned as having as making a positive contribution to the conservation area in the conservation area appraisal. So I was quite concerned that it would slip through everything. So these two groups of timber frame buildings are part of the kind of early townscape value. So those are real priorities for us.
Of course, and those came out through the THI. Definitely worth protecting. I mean, even you know the one we're doing in the middle, which is
number 100,
being funded by the THI to sort of regularize it and bring the group back into.
Siobhan, can we go back up to the slide which is 58 to 62? Just wondered if Benny, did you want to come in there on that?
Or Yeah, I think they should be on our local list. I've had a quick look at the Commonplace website, and I can see loads of buildings in Peckham Town Centre that haven't been recognised. And just while we've been on this call, I've nominated 3 of 3.
Good
Well
stuff.
done.
Easy to do.
Well done.
Great, good. Okay, let's move on then. So we've got the 2 groups of timber frame buildings, which are really important. Next slide. Okay,
Yep.
so this was just a fundamental argument that we should nominate all the THI buildings. There's 9 buildings which have been now repaired and restored through the THI. These 2 are within the group we mentioned, 98 to 104. And this is a real argument for group value, that it's about the group of buildings and the kind of contribution to the townscape. Okay, so just underlining that.
I mean, the group, I always also find the group values are also very, very helpful as well, because, you know, it's individual building owners within those groups will feel that they're not, you know, being singled out. It's part of a group, and it's, you know what I mean? It's not one of those, oh, who's this? Who's picked my, picked my particular building out of a street of buildings? If they're a group, you know, that's that, and they all have a, you know, common values and common common sort of characteristics, that they're definitely well worth identifying. Yeah.
Great. Okay, next slide. Again, this is another, the Red Bull. The other 2 pubs that were restored have been nominated, but this one hasn't, so that's a kind of important omission.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and I think this idea of pubs having a kind of social value as well is something that comes through in the nominations that are already there. Yeah.
Well, this is the one that's got the is this the one that's got the
big tiled interior? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. Next slide. And 86 and 88, the next slide. Yeah. These are the other 2 THI buildings.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, okay. So just moving on, Siobhan. Okay. So this 22 to 24 Rye Lane. So the original, the host building, the upper part of the building is incredibly kind of dramatic and lavishly decorated, and it's got these dramatic gables, and it's got a real impact on a high level.
Yeah.
Then we've got the problem of the street level has been, you know, completely, it's something completely other. What do you think of that, Michael? I mean, is there an issue about lack of presence on the street?
No, I think it's, you know, we come across this all the time with, you know, with conservation areas. You know, I always say to people, don't look at what you see on the street. Look up at the buildings, you know, and look at those. That's where the value is often. It's certainly something worth nominating if you feel, you know, that is such a strong presence in that would have that has a clearly historic, you know, age and rarity, I would say, and then also aesthetic value, definitely.
Okay. Oh, sorry, next one, Siobhan. I'm clicking. Okay.
These are the Art Deco ones.
Right, so we really wanted to flag up the Art Deco buildings. Again, you know, there's a group of them. This is one of them. You know, this kind of mighty, majestic building. And this one feels quite sort of robust. The one that's more vulnerable is the former Argos further down. It's just looking very vulnerable because Argos is closed down now. I think, is it number 54? But I think we would want to make the argument about the group value of the Art Deco cluster.
Well, I think you just pick the ones that you've got. You know, you identified. Certainly, that's well worth identifying.
Okay. we move on because I want to make sure we've got enough time for questions. Peckham Arch. This one's really close to Benny's heart in particular. Benny, do you want to?
Yeah, well, I think this highlights the fact that we're not just talking about Georgian and Victorian buildings here. Some of the buildings that should be candidates for a local list could be modern buildings. That this was built in the early 1990s and isn't just a kind of interesting and unusual canopy here in Peckham, but it's quite a vivid example of what's called the British high-tech movement. And it's designed by one of the leading practices, Troughton McCaslin. John McCaslin's gone on to do the new King's Cross station and many other really eye-catching buildings in London. And this is our beloved local high-tech structure. And I think it's so well used by so many people in the community, the established community and new people like the students at the Mount View Academy. It's got to be a great candidate for a local list.
If we go to the next slide, Benny, there are some of your examples.
Here you can see vividly how this is very much a part of the spirit of architecture in London in the 1980s and 1990s, with this expressive engineering using tensile and kind of compressive elements in a really dramatic, exciting way, using fabric structures. And it's the people who designed the Peckham Arch, Jamie Troughton and John McCaslin, were proteges of Richard Rogers, and they came up in Richard Rogers' studio and had a hand in building the Lloyd's building and a number of other great landmarks. And so it's not just the Peckham Arch, it's actually a really interesting part of top quality architecture in London in the 1990s.
Okay, next slide. Thank you, Benny.
Just it's interesting. Obviously, it would be a structure, I suppose, that you'd be nominating there, and it's interesting because there's been a debate on the Commonplace website about the Millennium Bridge. The Millennium Bridge was nominated, and there's been a sort of tit for tat. Oh, I don't like it. Yes, I do like it. So I think it's worth highlighting those and seeing what happens. People will comment. People get encouraged. It encourages people to, give their opinion one way or the other. So it's well worth identifying, I would say. Okay.
Okay, just to wrap this bit up. So this was to really kind of reinforce this idea of a follow-up and an extension of this process of discussion that we're aiming to work towards a walk in Peckham on Saturday, the 22nd of October, and we'll be spreading the word. But, so we can have a debate in front of the buildings or structures about how valuable they are, and with a kind of increased awareness of the eligibility. Okay, I was hoping now we've got about 20 minutes left, just to see if there's any more questions that people have. Oh, I can see one, Nancy and Derek.
Again, watching the examples prompts me to say that the Historic England's criteria include whether the building is under threat. Is that something that might influence the local listing? Because Benny showing the arch is an example, I think, of a construction that's under threat. And the other thing I wanted to say was that in the context of associating it with famous people, an example would be the Gandolfi premises, which have no architectural interest, but have, the building in itself may not ever qualify for listing, but the fact that the Gandolfis work there makes a difference.
Well, I mean, that is the big challenge, isn't it? If you have a building which has a strong connection but is of little aesthetic or architectural value, does that make it?
Well,
I think it must be up to us to make the case for the building
Yeah.
that we like, and the website really gives you that opportunity to put in a description that presumably can be read by all visitors to the Commonplace website. And so I've just done a few of missing buildings on the high street. It's a chance to do a little bit of research and to celebrate something that's really important to you.
Well, I mean, can I just add to that, because that chimes with something that I'm really enthused by, which is an idea of sort of dynamic history. That history is not a set of facts that pile up, but it's a set of judgments. And that, you know, if you make the case for something, if you make the case for why something has value, then, you know, that is part of this kind of ongoing kind of dynamic history and the kind of re-enlivening of meaning. So I'm a very enthusiastic kind of proponent of that, and I support what Benny's just said.
Well, hopefully we can use this event on the 22nd to have a great debate about some of the buildings that we're seeing.
So in a sense, to sort of broaden it out, I think it's to kind of to try to encourage people to think, if you feel that something's pulling at you, try to figure out why you like it, or don't hold back, even if you can't put it in words, or you don't think it's kind of proper architectural argument. Like, I'd invite people to just try to put down why they think something is has significance.
I agree. Sometimes, you know, the most modest little building that hasn't, you know, is important to people, you know, is important, and it's worth sort of highlighting that, you know, if the website is intended to sort of bring that out, and certainly if you get people, you know, like responding to that and adding their voices to that, it adds to the weight. It gives more weight to it. So I agree with you, both of you, really, that if you have a sense, or if you think that something is of real importance to you and your community, it's well worth nominating it. Go for it, you know.
Michael, I've got a question here from Michelle on the chat.
Yeah.
And so she's referencing the former Clark's Shoes and Sainsbury's building on Rye Lane. Sorry, Michelle, do you want to put the question yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
sure.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
Well, I suppose what I was going to say was, if that building had been locally listed, would there have been more protection of its interior? That's what we're concerned about, that it looks like a lot of the interior has been like ripped out.
I think that even statutory listing is very, very difficult to, you know, particularly commercial property like that. It's very, very difficult to kind of protect entirely. Certainly local listing wouldn't protect an interior, I would say.
Oh dear.
Not unless it's properly recorded and measured and so on, because how would you enforce what has gone, what has been gutted, what has been removed, what, you know? It's very, very, without an inspection, a formal inspection, a measure, a description, a fulsome description of an interior, you know, and we simply don't have the resources to do that. And we don't, you know, I don't think that locally listed buildings are really more, you know, the local interest is really in their presence, in their ongoing presence in a community, in a townscape. It's, you know, it's difficult to use as I said, the local protection legislation doesn't even, you know, at the moment doesn't even protect them outside conservation areas. So you know, it's you know, it wouldn't protect their interior, I'm afraid. No.
Any other questions? sorry, I've got a question. Michael, would you anticipate that if a building has a lot of support in this commonplace nomination process, can that be referenced as kind of material evidence in the future if it's challenged by the building owner, or if there's some sort of planning issue that it, you know, there's a threat for demolition, etc. If wide and deep support has been demonstrated?
Well, I mean, I don't think, I think with the number of, it's not about you know, demonstrating wide and deep support. I would say it's not, because that would be, I did in a previous presentation, I did sort of say you could use the site to sort of vote for your favorite building, but it's not really. And I think I was caught up, I was, you know, pulled up on that, because people said, oh well, do we have to vote for all the buildings, because otherwise we will lose them, they won't, you know, they won't go on the local list. It's not that situation in this instance. So I would say, but certainly if you get, you know, I don't know, if we get 100, you know, people agreeing with one building, I think that would certainly give it a lot of weight, I would say. But I don't, you know, it's not, we're not placing a sort of threshold or anything like that on you know, those agreeing, the numbers of people agreeing. We simply want to get everybody's feedback on the nominations and on the candidates. The way the website works is it does keep a tally, so it shows when there's people agreeing with a nomination. It starts to tally and starts to show how many agree, how many disagree, what the colors, you know, it starts to, those green circles go red or green depending on how many people are, how many comments are, how many people are agreeing or disagreeing. So it's quite interactive in that way, but please don't assume that that's a, you know, that's something that is a tally that's giving you know, any more to us as an authority. It does help, but I would say it's not, I don't want people to feel that, oh, they have to agree with everything in order to keep it on the list. What we have already, it looks like 2,500 properties on the local list at the moment, and so, you know, we want to just make sure that it's comprehensive, that it's properly consulted, that all people, you know, people affected are properly heard, or given an opportunity to comment and contribute, and that's the purpose of this consultation.
Can I just ask one more question? Sorry.
Sure.
I've always been puzzled as to why Southwark hasn't had a local list to date. Is it too long ago, or did something go wrong, or was there political opposition to it, or?
Claire, you and me both. I have no idea why it's taken. We are one of two boroughs out of the 32 London authorities that don't have a local list. I honestly, I have no idea.
I heard. Sorry, just to answer this. Yes, sorry to butt in. Originally, there were on the national list. There were 4 grades 60 years ago, and they were like football divisions. There was always going for upgrading and going down the list, going up the list, and it was great inflation was going on, and there were about 10,000 was the limit of listed buildings, and they ended up with 100,000. So in the end, this is just what I'm getting at, they decided to scrap level 3 and 4. Level 4 was given to the 2 local authorities to do what they wanted with it. So that's the origin of the local list we have today. And 3 was upgraded to 2, and Well, so we only have 2 grades now, although there's a grade 2 star. I know it was just starting to come back again, but that's the origin of most local
Okay.
lists.
Okay.
They go back to the 1960s, but
Yes.
maybe not the case of Southwark.
Well, I mean, we used to. I'll just briefly, when we had the Benny will may remember Paul Calvacaresi, who was a historic. He worked at English Heritage, Historic England predecessor, and then worked at Southwark. And he was he was the local inspector, if you like, for Historic England, and eventually joined Southwark. And he was one of our senior conservation officers at Southwark. And he had an encyclopedic knowledge of Southwark. He came out from the GLC and really from the architect's office of the GLC, and kind of had grown up, if you like, spent his whole professional career in Southwark. And a lot of what we have now in the local as candidates for local listing are from his original kind of musings and charting of the borough's historic assets. He was obviously involved in, as Clyde is right, he was more than likely involved in that sort of rush to list in the 60s to 70s. There was a sort of a rush to kind of make sure that we've got all the statutory listed buildings in the borough, but he obviously kept his eye on all the other buildings that are of note and worthy, and so we have his list, and he took I mean, a lot of the descriptions that we have at the moment are all his words on those buildings. And then but following that, every time we've done an SPD, certainly in the last 10, 12 years, every time I've been involved in any of the SPDs or AAPs or local strategic documents, we always do an area character study, which includes an assessment of buildings of local interest and local value, and that included, say, the Old Kent Road recently, and various and the Walworth area, the Elephant and Castle area, Peckham, and Canada Water, and that's what I say. The sort of is an amalgam. Today, what we see is an amalgam of Paul's list, and then all the lists that had come out of the various SPDs, and that's how it's ended up being where it is. But as I say, it's these kind of things that have sort of sat in various different places in the council, and this is the first opportunity we've had to sort of put them all on one place, in one place and in one format, and publicize them and encourage people to comment. So I'm not saying we've got it all right and we've got it all wrong, but it's our first and best guess, I guess.
Well, it couldn't come at a moment too soon. There's an awful lot of change happening on Rye Lane, the centre of Peckham, and the story that Michelle brings up about the tragic evisceration of parts of the interior of the former Sainsbury's is a terrible story. And I know the Southwark enforcement team have had a close eye on that, and we watched them haul out about half a wall of fabulous tiles that used to characterize the interior of this. Some of the buildings, like the old timber frame houses and some of the landmark corner pubs on the high street, surely Paul Calvacaresi would have flagged those up for local listing. I was very fortunate to be walking around in Peckham with him while he was thinking about this. Could there be a scenario where some of Paul's suggestions somehow just dropped off or something like that?
I don't know. I honestly don't know, Benny. he
Could
kept
I
very.
add to that something that Benny's just reminded me? I only met Paul Calver-Cressy once, and I was involved in a listed building application. And he got out a series of photographs, and he said that these were taken in 1951. It was the old National Historic Building, etc., etc. And it was an extraordinary archive. I mean, has the archive survived, and how extensive is it?
Mm.
I'm not sure. We do have his. He did put a lot of the build. He took a lot of the photos, of the buildings that he had put on his list.
Yeah.
And he kept. We've got a pile of CDs in the office, which are of his photos.
And
And he was an avid photographer.
Yeah. Are they accessible? Would you know? Or
Well, I suppose they could be made accessible. We would need, we'd need to make sure that we need to sort of somehow, I don't know, put them on a put them together and publicize them in some way. But that would be a bit of work that would need to be done. But we could certainly look into them.
Can I remind you also, at the beginning of the THI, there was, some of us remember, a huge surveying operation up and down Rye Lane and the High Street. And I've been trying to get hold of this information. I think Magda has mentioned it to you, Michael.
Yeah.
And she told me that you said that it wasn't publicly available because it contained confidential personal information about valuations. Is that true?
Well, I'm not sure.
Because that is a sort of archive which should be a tremendous value to us amateurs, outsiders, outside the council. That is.
Yeah. I'm not. Well. I was asked about forgive me, but I was asked about a spreadsheet which was used for the original value of all the THI costs and so on.
That wasn't what I was asking for. There were.
Oh, right.
There were about 20 of us did a fulsome survey, about 350 dwellings, and replete with the photographs, but it wouldn't have concerned valuations.
Okay. Forgive me. When Magda asked me about it, she asked me about a spreadsheet of all the, which was what our consultants had prepared to feed into. It was a sort of enormous spreadsheet of all the costs that they'd assessed for each and every one of the. I think there were 40 odd properties that had been identified originally.
Can I contact you individually on this? Because I think it wasn't a spreadsheet. It was actually it was a lot of stuff, 350 pages or more.
There was a Dropbox which I had difficulty getting into that was set up, and I don't know what.
That's right. That's what was involved.
Okay, I don't need. So I might try and find out about it. Okay. Forgive me. I don't think I've had access to it or for some time now. So I'm not sure if it exists or where it is. Clyde, sorry.
Right.
Okay, look, folks, we've hit the end of our time. Michael, thank you very much. That was really interesting to have such a kind of informal discussion, and as well as the formal information that we need. So everybody, we all need to read the Heritage SPD closely if we haven't already done so, and tell other people about the walk on the 22nd of October. And I'll try to get the video up on the website as well, so that people can have a watch if they want to before the walk. So thanks everybody.
Yeah,
thank you for inviting me.
All right, and see you all soon. And thanks, Michael, again.
Well done, Michael.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Benny. Thanks for inviting me, everybody.
Bye. Bye, everyone.